Okay, it's 4.4, using Cope's comments to revise. Our learning objective is students will be able to revise their first draft essay to score higher on criteria A and B. So this lesson is designed for after your first draft essay has been graded, and now you're going to look at all the comments about criteria A and B, because remember that's all that I looked at, and make some changes to your essay to make it even better. The first thing, the question I want you to have in your mind is, how do I score higher on criteria A and B? Of course, the answer is to revise. The best writers are tireless revisers. All right. You've got something in your packet that looks like, well, part of it looks like this. There's a graphic. And I want you to fill in the blanks in this graphic, and I'm going to take you through it. The graphic is designed to help you understand the process of analysis, evaluation, and interpretation. Those are the three skills that you're assessed on in Criterion A and in Criterion B. So when we tackle a literary analysis, the first thing that we have to do is to look at those building blocks of literature. Those building blocks, those tools that the writer has in their toolbox that allow them to create meaning for the reader through the creation of their literary art. And that's where we have to start. And so that's what we did as we read each text. And I want you to remember that as you work now to revise your essays. So the very first thing you're going to do is look at an example of your literary aspect, and you're going to analyze it, looking at diction. Diction is just the words that are in the quote. Find the denotation, that means what the word literally means, as well as connotation. Connotation are the hints that are reading between the lines of specific words that are interesting. You also need to look at the imagery in the quotation or on the page or in the example that you're looking at. With imagery, you want to find the interesting evocations of one or more of the five senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, and really break them apart and explain how they work and why they're interesting. Tone is something else that is in these sort of building blocks of literature. Tone is simply the attitude of the speaker or the narrator. And so determine, what is their attitude in this example? Structure is also something you can look at. Even if your larger literary aspect was not structure, you can look at the structure of the lines you're analyzing. It's just finding the interesting ways the words, phrases, and sentences are organized. Sometimes you'll notice there's a lot of punctuation. Sometimes there's no punctuation. Sometimes there's parallel structure. Sometimes there are a lot of sentences. Sometimes it's a really long sentence. You're looking at those kinds of things when you analyze structure. And then the last one is atmosphere, which is similar to mood. They're two different things, really, but I have them here sort of connected. Atmosphere is really determining the vibe, and that, I think, is the best word to use. It's the vibe of the setting and how it is created. Mood is the overall feeling in the text and how it's created. So it's closely related to atmosphere, but it's more than just, it's created by more than just how the setting is described. So you can also look at this, especially atmosphere, if you're looking at descriptive sentences. Okay, so you start there. You start with these good things when you're looking at your examples, right? After you pick them apart, that is when you move to the evaluation level, I guess we could call it. It's a skill as well. And so after you look at certain words that are used, certain images that are created, ways the sentences are organized, you're going to ask yourself this question: what ideas are surfacing from the words, the images, the tone, the structure, the atmosphere, the mood? What feelings are created? And when you answer those questions, that is when you are evaluating. All right? The third step, and it really has to go in this order, you guys, is, I forgot to tell you I was going to give you some sentence starters to help you with evaluation. You can jot these down. Here's my favorite one, creates the feeling that. The imagery creates the feeling that. The words create the feeling that. Or how about this one, creates the sense that. Frames the reader's understanding of. Guides the reader toward the idea of. Gives the impression that. So those are some sentence starters for evaluating the text after you have analyzed. Okay, now for that third skill. And this one comes last. This is interpret meaning. And so oftentimes students start here. And the problem is that when you start with the interpretation, there's nowhere to go. You can't support it with anything except more interpretation. And we have to get to that non-debatable level where nobody can fight you with those words and the, what they mean in those images and what pictures they create, right? You have to get to this in the text in order to support evaluation, in order to support meaning. But at that interpretive level, that's where we look at the themes, right? And we say, what connection to theme is there? What meaning does the text suggest? And instead of trying to guess what the authors, O'Brien and Atwood, are trying to do, focus on what the language does and what the text suggests by creating certain thoughts and feelings and then connecting them to the theme that you want to focus on. So that is all criterion A and criterion B. Let me talk to you a little bit more about how we move from a descriptive essay to a literary analysis. A descriptive essay has a purpose of describing and explaining something that happened. The purpose of a literary analysis is that it argues, breaks down, picks apart, proves, supports, and defends a point that you are arguing that the text is making. All right? And Collins Dictionary defines analysis as a separating or breaking up of any whole into its parts, especially with an examination of these parts, to find out their nature, proportion, function, interrelationship, etc. And that's exactly what we're doing. IB defines analyzing, they like to use the S instead of the Z, right? Analyzing as breaking down in order to bring out the essential elements or structure of a text. So we're picking apart text, breaking it down to then add it up to an evaluation and an interpretation. Here's an example. I forgot I wanted to show you a different example than that one, so let me try this. So here's an example of analyzing. This is a student's work. They are analyzing the ghost motif. And so they've included a quotation about Lee Strunk rising from the dead and making a new sound right before Ted Lavender is shot in the head. And so here's how they break it up. They say the phrase rising from the dead is an example of the ghost motif, most obviously because rising from the dead is a supernatural ability, blurring the line between life and death. It is also a common saying that is used to figuratively describe something returning after being thought gone, forgotten, or finished. Also, Lee Strunk jokingly makes a ghost-like sound before Ted Lavender is killed, embodying a ghost himself, albeit in a comical way, since he rises now from the earth, the VC tunnels, like a ghost rises from the grave. It's as if he is joining in on the fun to joke about a dangerous situation that is now innocuous. So that is all analysis. They're picking apart this text and looking at how each piece works. Here's what they do next to evaluate it. The tension in the scene is so focused on Strunk surviving the tunnels that Ted Lavender's seemingly innocuous action resulting in death from a sniper is a complete surprise. The effect of the ghost motif here is intriguing because of the casual, almost amusing atmosphere created when Lee Strunk returns and mimics a ghost, which causes a relaxed feeling within the group and gives readers a sense of relief until we learn Lavender is shot and killed, which reminds the men and the readers that this is guerrilla warfare and nobody is ever truly safe. Okay, I'm not sure where my face is on the page. I lost my face, so hopefully it's not annoying you too much. The examples that I just gave you of criterion B show how an effective way to analyze and evaluate. So let's now go back to knowledge, understanding, and interpretation. This is the top item, right, in our graphic. And so this is what we do after we analyze and evaluate. We interpret. And the rubric asks, how well does the candidate demonstrate knowledge and understanding of the work or text chosen? Do you have a good example from the beginning, the middle, and the end of the text? That's going to be important. How about your details? Are you using specific, proper nouns, precise textual information instead of general summary type information? Are you using those good textual details that I would check off in your mastery check? The other question that's asked in the rubric, to what extent does the candidate make use of knowledge and understanding of the work or text to draw conclusions in relation to the chosen topic? So after looking at the analysis and evaluation, do you make a claim about meaning? Do you draw a conclusion? And that's really all about your line of inquiry, folks. Do you have a line of inquiry? Those of you who didn't do the videos for the videos for the essay originally maybe missed this, and that was problematic when writing your essay. So a reminder now that your line of inquiry needs to have these 7 aspects, and here is an example. The next thing that you want to make sure that you have is a valid claim. So when you ask this question, you're then going to look at your examples, analyze and evaluate them, and look for a pattern. What is similar between these examples? What is different? How do they change over the course of the book? And in the end, what is O'Brien's point, or what is the text's suggested point through the use of these literary aspects? And that's when you make your thesis statement. It needs to have a rich idea. That it goes back to a theme. And so in your thesis statement, you do need to have these different aspects: genre, author with name of text, literary aspect, and rich idea. Here's an example from the ghost motif. Tim O'Brien utilizes the ghost motif in the war novel. Ooh, my face popped back up. I can move it over there. The things they carry to convey the complex emotions of guilt and innocence created in the Vietnam War, where soldiers die for no reason, face ambiguity in every moment, and resist the anger and revenge it causes them. So they are making a point. They're making a claim, and it has an interesting idea. Someone could argue against this. It's not just regurgitating the theme. It's taking a stand and arguing a position about that theme. All right, so a little bit more about interpretation. Make sure that you have that textual evidence, especially when you are contextualizing your quote. Be very precise about your context. Think about those, tick marks that I make on your mastery checks. You want to have just as many, 5 specific details in every 3 sentences is my rule of thumb, right, for those mastery checks. Look at all the details here. First chapter, which carries the same title as the novel. Lee Strunk, not just a soldier, but who is it? Use the proper noun, their name. Rising from the dead, a short quotation can work as textual evidence, a specific detail as well. He was checking on the Viet Cong tunnel. Lee Strunk joins in on the jokes, makes moaning sounds, mimicking a ghost before Ted Lavender. Again, the noun, the proper noun, who is returning from urinating not far away, a shot in the head. Sorry, that's hard to see. Also, pick the best examples, not just the ones that, we talked about in class, but the best for your particular literary aspect. Okay, so criterion B we've talked about a lot already in this video. I'll just remind you that in the rubric it says, to what extent does the candidate analyze and evaluate how the choices of language, technique, and style and broader authorial choices shape meaning in relation to the chosen topic. And so in order to score higher on criterion B, you're going to make sure that you're tracing one key literary aspect or authorial choice throughout the book. And look how it works as a pattern. How does it repeat? How does it change? And maybe most importantly, how is it used at the very end? Because this is how writers use their text to create meaning. And so the first thing you're going to do is analyze. I already went over this example. Here it is again, where you're picking apart the text. You're looking at the what does this mean literally? What is the connotation, the figurative meaning, and connecting it to all of those good pieces of the context, and really spending a lot of time just with the analysis, just looking at what is interesting about the language of the example. The evaluation is when you look at the effects. You ask, okay, how does this affect the reader? What thoughts are created, what feelings are created, and how does this get us towards meaning, towards a theme? The IB defines evaluation as making an appraisal of the effect of the text. So think about, what is the effect of the word or line on the reader's thoughts and feelings? Go beyond the fact that they make it easier to understand. I hear that all the time. That's not an appraisal of the effect. Clear, understandable, sympathize with, feels real, authentic. None of those things are appraisals of the text, because none of them deal with specific thoughts and feelings that are created, meant to then create meaning. Include what particular feeling you get from reading the word, the image, or the phrase. Include what thoughts come to mind through denotations and connotations. Then look at how the various examples work as a pattern to create a larger feeling or thought. Here are some good sentence frames you can use to make sure you're evaluating the text. I gave you some earlier. Here are some more. The use of the ghost motif creates the thought or feeling that by. You can use that one. Here's one about fragmented structure. The use of the fragmented structure creates the feeling that the reader is remembering war stories by showing the reader little shards of memories of the same story in multiple chapters. How about this sentence frame? The word, line, image brings to mind the thought created because. The listing of the many different items the GIs carry and the corresponding weight brings to mind the burden of war, because the reader feels burdened by reading the sheer number of items and accumulated weight they create. So you would do this after listing all of the different objects and their weights and kind of picking apart the quotes to explain what's interesting about them. All right, guys, it's time to revise. I know we don't want to do it, but the best writers are tireless revisers. You got this. I got you. Let me know how I can help you, please. I am here for you.